Hello, this is Clint with Wagner Energy Services. You're listening to the Local Energy Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Local Energy Podcast. My name is Peter Brecht. I am co-host free today. Wade is still working on a new drilling project and quite busy, obviously, with oil prices where they're at now, which is a great thing to see. Yeah, it's been an absolute crazy week, and I don't know how else to explain it with WTI and just all the things that we're all monitoring across the board. And unfortunately, I've been glued to Twitter more than I'd like to be. I was able to finally take my kids to the beach last night and enjoy some time with them. And I guess reminder of why we do what we do. But today's guest, I'm excited to introduce Randall Arms from Epicore Biosystems. I was introduced to Randall, I think, over a year ago is when we first started talking. Had some pretty interesting things that he was sharing with me in terms of working on the oil field, safety, even athletics. I think was maybe something that was more integral to my life and what my wife does is on the PT side of stuff. But Randall, thank you for coming on. I'm excited to chat with you and help kind of broadcast your message and what you do.
Yeah, Peter, I've obviously been a fan since I think I got introduced to you through TikTok, if I remember right. I saw you on that platform, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Kind of fell in love with what you were kind of kicking off, and I love how you guys bring a different light to the table for the oil and gas. Oil and gas to me is, I still feel very, very new and green into this. I said in Nashville, which the only oil and gas thing that we have are either gas stations or the pipeline that may run through. So getting to be a sponge in this market has been really fun for us.
I mean, imagine it's probably similar to how I feel living in San Diego, right? I always joke there's like 5 of us in San Diego that are in oil and gas, but Nashville, man, I love. So you guys, if there's one thing I know better than oil and gas, and substantially better actually, would be coffee. And I know you guys have some incredible coffee shops out there. I'm trying to think of the name of the one that I've gone to anyways, it'll come to me, but I keep I literally have a map in my Google Maps app of like coffee places that I've gone just in case I want to revisit them in the future. So
Yeah, yeah.
great stuff there. But past the coffee, so I know we talked about like I think hydration and dehydration and all this stuff, and I'm not gonna kick it off there. I'm gonna kind of pass it over to you, and would love to learn about your background and how you got in this position first, and then let's talk about what Epicore is, but more importantly, I think the theory behind it and the importance of what you're solving for.
Yeah. Great question. So, just a little bit about me. I'm your typical redneck kid from Tennessee that got into health and safety one way, shape, or another for the last 10, 15 years, something around there. Spent time in manufacturing, a little bit of construction, some consult kind of stuff. But got into the connected wearable side, moved onto the salesy dark side a few years ago, and got introduced to into Epicore through a like potential partnership with the company that I was at, Blackline Safety, which if you're in oil and gas, you probably seen those guys floating around for gas detection. And Epicore's not new. Been around since 2017. 3 legs of the business. Really go after the medical clinical side. They were spun out of Northwestern University, Corey Simpson Institute, really looking at microfluidics and sweat technology at clinician levels, thinking like cystic fibrosis and how to manage that, other areas in the medical side. We have some great investor companies of ours. One familiar in this platform, obviously, is Chevron, which we'll talk about a little bit later. PepsiCo, Gatorade as well. We make a sports product in the PepsiCo world called the GX patch. It's designed for the sports athlete. And what we're really looking to do is just up our commercial engine in the industrial athlete space. We believe there's a direct correlation to, for every sports athlete you have out there, there's 10 or so industrial athletes. And how do we maintain performance, operational error prevention, cognition free through the lens of hydration? There's a lot of good science around behind that.
Interesting. So I don't hydrate well personally, right? If my water doesn't have coffee in it, I'm probably not drinking it. But I mean, from like everyone here is safety guy, right? So they got the safety guy coming or whatever. And and I wouldn't really say you. I mean, you're a safety guy in a sense of like, okay, this is something that everyone should be thinking about. But I mean, I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking through hydration. So I don't know. Let's start there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, growing up on a farm, I'll give you the example that I had. You drank when you were thirsty, right? You stopped when you got extremely hot. The problem with that statement, unless you're working in your yard, right? But when you're in the industrial world, you have a lot of other factors you have to consider. You have strain on the body. What type of work am I doing? You have obviously your FRCs, which hold in heat. You may add Tyvek on over top of that, which is going to hold in extra heat, acclimatization. There's all these different factors that play into it from a work readiness standpoint. And then you look at what you just talked about, like the coffee, the nutrition side that kind of exacerbates that at the same time. So there's a lot of things to consider. What people don't, it's hard to understand if you don't pay attention to hydration. It's what gets people in trouble. And I'll give you my legacy, like why I do what I do. Like how did this guy go from what he's doing now to really talking about hydration in a second. But the thing people get in trouble with is they don't start drinking until they get thirsty, which is the natural reaction. But when you're at 91 degrees Fahrenheit, high humidity or lower humidity, even in that case, you think about the Permian, you think about Texas oil fields. If you're in the swamp in Louisiana, you start drinking when you're thirsty, you're already behind the ball. And you start cumulative thinking about that day over day, turnaround situations. That's where people get in trouble. So it's more about how do you measure, or how do you manage what you can't measure outside of a thirst signal? And that's kind of where the tech enablement kind of comes into play. Just thinking about wearables in general is getting a little more sciencey and that aspect and making sure that we stay ahead of it. And there's a lot of great behavioral things that we can do. Making sure we have adequacy to water, we have adequacy to shade, and rest water shade is kind of that generic part of a typical heat plan that keeps us in place. But we also have the productivity pressures, right? You talked about where the oil energy game is right now. Like there's still a bunch of pressures. So how do we manage that? Right. And that's kind of what we're trying to uncover here is how do we still make sure we make money? How do we make sure to keep our people safe? What is the science that can kind of bring those two together? So a couple of like key things I like to throw out that's kind of gets people thinking. I don't know if you partake in a alcoholic beverage, but one of the key things we talk about people to be like, makes sense, is when you get to 3% of body loss and dehydration, you get the same cognitive slowdown or cognitive response as someone at 0.08 blood alcohol level.
Interesting.
So if you think, hey, I've been inebriated before, I've been drunk, I know how that feels. Have I been that way in my work? How does that kind of work? And then the pressure to the company is, well, damn sure don't let nobody work when they're drunk, right? Because of the cognitive impairment. Why do I let people work when they're dehydrated? So that's kind of where the play comes into and understanding it.
I could almost guarantee you that I am currently dehydrated. Like no joke, right? And so I don't know. It might not be too hard to increase my performance. I don't know if so there's a comedian, and when you start talking about hydration, reminded me, Mike Birbiglia is a comedian. He's been along for a long time, but some of his older stuff. And he used to say, like, when he was in his younger days, he'd be driving long distances, and his like game he would play with himself is he'd drink a lot of water, and he would stop over at the gas station, and if his pee was clear, he was like, I'm hydrated, and like that was kind of his running joke with himself.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like. I've never played that game before, but going into this patch, and I think that's something I really want to touch on, is we don't have to play that game. There's a patch that people are wearing, athletes are wearing, that actually tells them I don't know if it's a chemicals level or it's just hydration, but maybe tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So a cool thing about Epicore, I'll call it the nerdy science side, because we have an incredible team. I'm not trying to plug Epicore by any means, but biasly, we have an incredible team that has spent years on understanding sweat and how do you take a small portion of looking at the body and looking at an exaggerate over the entire body to say, if I sweat this much, this is what it looks like over your entire body here. So we at Epicore, we literally measure sweat. We take the sweat off the body. We measure it in a way that translates to milligrams, which is what most people understand. When I eat that great breakfast burrito, if I'm in Laredo, Texas, it's very salty, very great food. But also if I'm ingesting, liquid IV, Gatorade, or any type of electrolyte drink, I know what that looks like. So there's some education there, but we're actually giving that as that amount that's coming off the body. And the same thing in fluid ounces. The way that we go about business is more about behavior change. We don't want to overload people with a bunch of data. We try to keep it really, really simple. And it's, you lose a bottle of water worth of sweat, we nudge you on the arm. Great, it's time to drink a bottle of sweat. We'll give you a little bit different nudge if you don't log that intake when you get to 2% of your body loss, because it's where we get into that. Hey, you're on that mild dehydration, which again, where other wearables come into play, thinking about elevated heart rate and heart rate variability and how people get into that mild level of dehydration. So it's more about behavior change. It's more just about coaching, really simple. Hey, drink, take micro breaks. Make sure that when you do rest, water, shade, you're actually taking water in and shading your skin. And the idea there, I know it sounds very like nomenclature, but it's, slow down a little bit to speed up. Get more operational, drops on tools. There's a lot of cool science behind that when it comes to, time on task and why does it take so long in the second part of our turnaround? Because we've had a couple of operational errors and, are we really tracking that to dehydration? Is there a play there? Be worth investigating, right? There's a lot of good sciencey stuff behind it, but
Yeah.
could be a correlation. So
Are you guys measuring or seeing a decline in let's call it incidents because of like what you're rolling out or what you're looking at? Or is it more like we're kind of getting into this, we know what can be accomplished, we're trying to get to that point where we can actually make a difference there?
yeah, so great question. So I'll give an example with Chevron. So Chevron's an investing partner. They're kind of like that hair club for men. Like, not only am I the CEO, but I'm also a client too. Kind of the same thing. They're an investor, but they also use the product. So San Joaquin Valley, wells out there, one of the early adopters for us. They built a program. A lot of people understand like work authority, which gives the workers like, hey, I can stop work because it's an unsafe condition. They flipped the script and said, we're going to have stop water authority. So they built a program around hydration. They saw the need after doing a pilot with us. And this has continued for a couple of years out there in San Joaquin Valley. Peter, they're on year 2 of no SIFs. And they are directly pushing this to hydration protocol. They have a very strong protocol there. They have a very understanding of, they put it on the most highest risk worker. And when that highest risk worker gets a nudge to drink, they do a micro break and they stop and drink, and they have a very small rest, water, shade micro break. So things that we can track. We can show that in our data to say, hey, your groups are breaking for this long. Their skin temperature has dropped X amount of degrees, and they have been in rest for X amount of minutes to, again, complement a typical heat plan. So interesting to see. First year, I was like, man, that's interesting to see if it continues. Obviously, second year, their summer season came around. They said the same thing, like, hey, we're in 2 years, and prior to that, they were having 4, 6, 7 SIFs per heat season. So not just heat SIFs, obviously, but all SIFs. So you tie that back to operational, like what does that cost the company? What is that? Obviously, is a lagging indicator, but how's that changing our leading indicators and making us more competitive? That's where the ROI comes into play. Is like, okay, now we're starting to see like actual cost savings here, and not including like employer well-being. The worker side that we see, we've got tons of stories that come out of this. Like people aren't catching cramps, or they'll say, hey, I'm drinking all this water, but I'm still catching cramps. What's the deal? Like, oh, well, maybe pay attention to your sodium. Maybe you're a saltier sweater, because everybody's sweat profile is different. You and I could go do the same job, and because you're in Southern California and I'm in Tennessee, it's a different climate. I'm probably going to die doing the same thing.
Right.
Digging the same ditch, right? Just understanding that as a education piece really helps out to understand, like, okay, maybe it is a little bit of more of a sort of a blanket statement. Blanket statements are good, but how do we get the grading? And that's where that kind of comes from.
Well, in every company too, we've talked to, I don't know how many at this point, but one conversation that has stuck with me is a question I like to ask is, what's your favorite energy drink? And obviously we get the common answer is the White Monster because everyone likes that one, or it's Red Bull, or it's coffee, or hey, another one I've come across more often and which surprised me is I don't drink coffee, no stimulants. But we were talking to Tad Wallace over at C3 Oilfield Services, and he's like, I don't drink anything. And he's like, and if I catch any of my guys ever drinking an energy drink or something out on the field, he's like, we're, that's a conversation. He's like, it's not allowed.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. You don't come across many companies that'll say that. I maybe there are, maybe, but he was just so open and like, I guess direct about it, which was pretty cool. But Tad's got a good sense of humor, but he is a more direct person and kind of has his way about him. But I respected that answer, and I can't imagine that those energy drinks are helping anybody. So
There's I can't sit here and say, hey, Randall never drinks energy drinks and Randall has this like perfect thing held. Absolutely not, right? I think we all have our vices somewhere in life, and there's do I think there's a place for them? Probably, right? We run across people in night shift where they got kids at home, or they have a working wife at home that works from home, or they just can't get on a good schedule. And they're like, hey, I need a pick me up. I need coffee. I need a monster.
sure.
I need something.
I mean, Red Bull athletes are consuming them left and right.
Yes.
It's kind of a joke. I'm pretty sure it's water, but anyways.
Well, I mean, they have in my kids' school. I'm like, you guys are giving,
No way.
15-year-olds, there's access to these caffeinated drinks. I'm like,
Man.
you wonder why they want to fight all the time, or, do those type of things. But the thing about it is, like anything, it's moderation. Same thing with coffee, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of science around, like, what is your window for caffeine, or where's your window for these things? And I think the education thing is to make sure that you are drinking water. You have to replace fluids. Anytime you have a diuretic, you have to get fluid in your body. I'll tell you a great shameless plug for my boy Keely Bell. By the way, I think you'd be a great person for your podcast. He is like I call him the vanilla gorilla, but he has a great mental speak and does things like IEDC and all these different conferences. But he has a great presentation on understanding intentionality with your health in the oil field. And he preaches that. He's like, look, you got to take care of your body. You got to do certain things. If you're going to do these things like diuretics, or you got to compensate for them. And if you don't, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's a really good piece. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I got into this, because I think it's important for people to understand. My dad's my hero. I heard you say it the other day, right? Like, your dad is your absolute hero. He is my hero. I try to say this like getting a little bit emotional, but my dad grew up building bridges, working rock quarry, blue collar guy, worked from sun up, sundown, had a part-time farm. Like, the guy was the epitome of staying in the sun. He had retired about 10 years early due to chronic kidney disease. What people don't realize is, if you have like piss poor habits in hydration and nutrition and these things, especially working out in these, extreme environments, your body's going to catch up with you, whether you like it or not. Your mind may not, but your body's definitely going to catch up with you. And talking like, hey, how do I come into this cool novel like company that's got a lot of good stuff? And I was talking to him like, I'm great where I'm at, but this is, I lived and breathed this with you, because we could set a clock to when he would go into heat stress or go into heat exhaustion, or the 2 heat strokes that he had. Like, literally, like the first week of June, he'd climb out of a track hoe and, fall out, So I was like, if we had something like this, some type of tool that would help you understand how your body did more than just, I need to get thirsty, I need to take a drink of water.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have done? Like, would it have helped you at 35 in the 80s, or, in the early 90s? Typical blue collar answer, love him to death. He's like, well, it sure in the hell wouldn't hurt. I was like, okay. So that's kind of my legacy play into talking to companies, is like, I just want to save the next 35-year-old dad that is pounding monsters, or is,
Totally. Yeah, what is it about 35? That is the number. I'm right there myself, and my wife is like, look, she's very health conscious, crunchy as they call them, but And to make it worse, like not the SoCal, but like just like good like eating and all that. And she's like, you got to go get a blood panel, like not just the one from the doctor, but like a full on, because they do them. And she did one I think it was like a year ago or whatever, and the blood panel came back. We're the same age, and it was like, she's like, it came back, and I'm 24 years old based on my profile. I'm like, well, good for me, but I'm pretty sure mine's gonna tell me 60. So it's like that first step of like go get the thing done, and then understanding it, and yeah, there's so much to unpack with all that. But
I think we don't want to feel like we're invincible, right? We
right,
don't want to
of
say
course.
like
Yeah,
we're on this downslope kind of thing.
yeah.
It's I feel like there's people like you, like your wife will tell you to go get a blood panel, and there's people that go buy a boat and some kind of crazy car and do something nuts, or a Corvette,
I was at the doctor 2 days ago for my annual physical, and annual physical. I went like 3 years ago, anyways. And I'm sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, like these are your numbers." He's like, "How's everything going?" And I had some things I wanted to tell him, and I'm like, I feel as a man, maybe this is a guy thing, but I'm like, I feel like embarrassed to tell you that I'm not able to do a certain thing, or like this is what I'm experiencing. But the reality is, look, we're all human. So if you're listening to this, you're in oil and gas, just look. It doesn't mean you got to go out and do anything crazy. It's just maybe drink some water, keep it simple. And then if you want to reach Randall, I will have a link in bio for you guys to reach out. He's got some really interesting posts on his LinkedIn. And is there anywhere else that people can find you?
Yeah, well, I don't know when this will come out, but I can tell you that Chevron's doing a really interesting heat management talk at the API in Houston at the
Okay.
Petroleum Club.
Yeah.
API is putting that on for the Houston chapter. Natalie Martin out there, great person who's really diving into the science and understanding the reason why Chevron went down this road. And, it's all glory. There's bumps and bruises along the way, and tech adoption, and how the hell we get from heat stress to hydration kind of thing. And she does a really good job to explain that, because she was in the trenches with this thing. So if anybody's in the Houston world, there's that. But we'll be at different shows. I feel like I need an apartment in Midland or Lubbock, somewhere out there right now.
Yeah,
Just we've
no
been
kidding.
traveling. So, but 'tis the season. We're out and about everywhere. I think we'll be in Tucson at the Energy Workforce Conference coming up at the end of the month. So again, it's evangelistic education, and then let you guys decide what you want to do with it. But we just need to get the word out that hydration is a leading indicator that affects a lot of things, and there's a lot of science behind it. I mean, sports athletes use it every day, right? So we're just taking that world into the industrial world to keep our people safe, if not better, going home.
Love it. Randall, thank you so much for your time. I'll catch up with you here. I'm soon, very, very soon, I'm sure. So have a great afternoon.
All right. Take care. We'll see you
later.